Right. Hello everyone. Hope you guys are doing good. So today I'm going to be discussing the solutions to Codeforce's educational round 116. So this round ended about 2 hours ago, and talking about the difficulty, I found the round to be tricky. And personally speaking, for me, it was like one of those rounds which you just want to forget ever happened. Like my performance was really horrible. I was able to solve the first three problems, but by the time I was done with the third problem, there was only half an hour remaining. And even though I got close to getting an intuition for the problem E, I could not complete it in time. But nevertheless, after the contest, I have upsolved it. So I'll be discussing four problems A, B, C, and E. So yeah, let's get right into it. Let's start with the solution to problem A. As you can see, I messed up a lot here in both of the first two problems, and there was like a lot of penalty. So I just want to forget about my performance in the contest, right? So yeah, let's start with the solution. So we have a string S which contains only the characters A's and B's, and what we want to do is we want to change the minimum number of characters in S, and the final result should be such that the number of AB's should be equal to the number of BA's in the string, and we want to print the resulting string which will result from us changing the minimum number of characters. And the condition which should hold is that the number of AB's in the string should be equal to the number of BA's, right? So the solution here goes something like this. So you just have to make an observation here to get it to the correct solution, and that observation is every AB is accompanied by a BA. So for every AB there is going to be BA, but there is going to be one exception, and that exception is when after AB there are just all B's in the strings. So with the exception of case when we have something, then an AB, and after that we have all B's, right? So in this case, this particular AB is not going to be accompanied by a BA, but in all the other cases, obviously this chain of B's will end somewhere, and after this B's I will have an A, right? So after all these B's have ended, the chain of B's has ended, I will get an A, and that BA will just cancel out the AB. So this particular AB is going to be cancelled out by this particular BA, but that is not going to happen only in one case, and the case is when uh, the chain of B never ends, right? So the string ends, but the chain of B's doesn't end. And yeah, so a similar case can be made for BA, right? Every BA is accompanied by an AB. So every BA is accompanied by an AB because I have a chain of A's, and once the chain ends, I will get a B. But the only case where that is not going to happen is the case when the chain ends with the end of the string. So that just means that every BA is followed by an AB, but it doesn't happen when the string ends with a chain of A's, right? So what we can observe from here is that the difference between AB's and BA's can be at max 1, because every other BA is going to be accompanied by an AB, and every other AB is going to be accompanied by a BA, but only in these two cases is that not going to happen, right? This case and this case. So what we can do is if the string has two B's in the end, we can just convert the last B to an A, if at all the string has an AB. And if the string has a BA and it has a chain of A's towards the end, we can just convert the last A to a B, right? So let's just quickly have a look at the code to get a better idea of what I'm trying to say. So what I do is I first calculate the number of AB's in the string, and then I calculate the number of BA's in the string. If they are already equal, then I don't have to do anything. But if AB is greater than BA, that just means that AB is equals to BA plus 1, and the string is like this: something, then an AB, and then a string of B's, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert it to something, then A, then a string of B's, and finally an A. So I'll just change the last character from B to A, and that will do the job. And finally, this is the case when I have something like BAAA, and that can be just converted to BAAAB. So here I'll just convert the last character to a B and get done with it. So yeah, that will just work, and yeah, that's good enough. So let's move on to the second problem now. Right. So again, there was a lot of penalties involved in this contest for me. Anyways, so let's see what this problem has to say. So we have a university where there is data in computers, but initially the data is only on the first computer, and we have a total of n computers. And what happens is we can share data between one computer to another if and only if they are connected by a cable. And finally, we need to, and each sharing of data takes 1 hour, and we need to tell the number of hours it will take to copy the entire data to all the computers if there are k patch of cables that we have. And basically what we can do is we can just pick one patch of cable, and we can just pick one patch cable, and using that we can transfer data from one computer to another, and that is going to take 1 hour of my time. So finally I need to tell the total number of hours that it's going to take me to share data to all the other computers, and I need the minimum amount of time. So yeah, that is what I am supposed to find out. And the constraints here are huge, that is k and n can be up to 10 to the power 18. So obviously we can't do a brute force here, we have to come up with an O of 1 or O of log n solution. So yeah, let's see what actually is happening here. So let's just look at this case where n is equals to 8 and k is equals to 3. So here we have 8 computers and we have 3 cables. So initially we have just one computer which has all the data. So in the first hour, I can just use one out of these 3 cables to copy all the data from computer 1 to computer 2. So now I have 2 computers, and I have 3 cables. So what I can do is I can choose 2 out of these 3 cables and connect these cables to computers 1 and 2, and the other end of these cables to computers 3 and 4. And what that will do is I'll finally after 2 hours have 4 computers, 1, 2, 3, 4, which will have the data. And now I have 4 computers, but the number of cables is only 3. So obviously I can't connect a cable to all my active computers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose just 3 computers out of the 4 which have data, and I'll connect the other end to the computers which don't have the data currently. So after that, I'm going to have like 7 computers which have data, and I'll be done with 3 hours. So in the next hour, I'll just take one of the cable from these 3, connect it to computer 7, and transfer the data from 7 to 8, and be done with it, right? So yeah, this is how this example is working, and let's make some observations here. So we are at problem B. So really what here, the main thing here is to just make one observation, and that observation is that if the current number of active computers, so I'll say that a computer is active if it has data, and it is inactive if it doesn't yet have data. So the observation here is that if the number of active computers is less than or equal to k, then it doesn't make sense to leave any computer out in the next hour. It makes sense to just choose all the computers and connect one end of the cable to them and the other end to an inactive computer, right? And just do it. So if we have active computers, number of active computers is less than or equals to k, then share data from all of them, because it doesn't make sense to leave any of it out, right? Since we want to minimize the number of hours. So after 1 hour, I will have a minimum of n comma, so let's say that this number is active, or maybe a, so I'll have minimum of n comma a number of active computers. So this is what we can do if the number of current active computers is less than or equals to k. But if the number of active computers is greater than k, so this is case 1. So now let's talk about case 2. So if a is greater than k, so now we can't take all the active computers, but obviously there doesn't make any sense to leave out any cable now. So now what we are going to do is we are going to take all the cables and attach one of their ends to an active computer and the other end to an inactive computer. So now we'll take all the cables and attach one end to an active computer. So finally after 1 hour I will have like, so I had a plus k. So what I'm going to have is I'm going to have minimum of n comma a plus k active computers. So right, once I have reached a situation like this where a becomes greater than k, then I'm just going to take k computers all that. I'm just going to make k computers active at every hour. So the number of extra hours that this will take is, so the number of extra hours this will take is just going to be the ceiling of, so I have already a computers and I need n, so I need n minus a computers, and every time I'm taking a maximum of k computers, so it is going to be a ceiling of n minus a divided by k. So this is my extra which is getting added once I have reached a situation where the number of active computers exceeds k, and if that is not happening, I can just keep doubling my computers and until and unless my number of active computers is less than equals to k. And if I reach a situation where the number of active computers exceeds n in the first case itself, then I'll just break out. And yeah, this is a greedy approach which we can follow to get the solution to this problem. And yeah, that pretty much sums it up. So let's just quickly have a look at the code now. So yeah, this is what I'm doing here. First of all, if n is equals to 1, you can straight away output 0 because there is already one computer which has all the data. Otherwise, what you do is you keep track of the number of days and the number of active computers. And if the number of active computers becomes greater than k, then case 1 is over. So you just break out. But if that's not the case, you can just multiply your number of active computers by 2 and just increment the number of days. And finally check if the number of active computers exceeds n or not, because if that happens, you can again break out of the loop. And finally just check if the active computers is less than n or not. If that is the case, then you are currently in case 2 and you just add ceiling of n minus number of active computers divided by k to your answer. I have a predefined CLDIF function which does that for me. So yeah, finally I just output my answer and that is just going to work. So yeah, this is the solution for problem B. Right, let's move on to the next problem now. So the next problem is called banknotes, and this was a rather simple problem. So let's see what this problem has to say. Like it has a simple greedy solution. So obviously it can be confusing on the first look, but once you make the greedy solution, it seems really doable. So let's see what this problem has to say. So basically you have n different types of banknotes and the denomination of the ith node is 10 raised to power ai, and you define a function fs which is the minimum number of banknotes required to represent exactly s balls. So for example, if you have 59 rupees, then you'll take 14 notes, that is 9 notes of denomination 1 and 5 notes of denomination 10. That's what you're going to do. And finally what you have to do is you have to find out the minimum integer such that so what you have to find out is you have been given k, so you have to find out the minimum integer which cannot be made using less than or equals to k coins. That is the minimum integer s such that f of s is strictly greater than k. Right. So this statement means you need to find the smallest integer which cannot be made using less than or equals to k coins. That is, it requires strictly greater than k coins to be made. And yeah, you have been provided with the array a and you need to tell the answer. So let's try to make some observations here again. So the first observation that I'm going to make in this problem is the approach which you are going to follow such that you can calculate f of s for any s. So the first natural question is how to calculate f of s. And the answer is simple. The answer is you just greedily take the maximum available denomination, which is less than equals to your requirement, of course, since you want to end up with exactly s and not something which is greater than s. So what you want to do is you want to greedily take the maximum available denomination, which is less than or equal to the requirement. And this is actually pretty intuitive, but I'm going to try to prove it. And I'm going to give an intuitive kind of proof here. So let's say we have only two kinds of denomination, that is 1 and 10, and we have a coins of denomination 1. We are using a coins of denomination 1, and let's say we are using b coins of denomination 10, and let's say s is equals to a plus 10b, right? So if s is equals to a plus 10b, one possible method is to use a coins of denomination 1 and b coins of denomination 10. But what we notice is if a is greater than 10, then we can replace 10 coins of type A, 10 coins of denomination 1 with just one coin of denomination 10, right? So essentially what happens is the number of coins which we were using here is a plus b, but final number of coins which I'm using in the other approach is a minus 10 plus b plus 1. So that is a plus b minus 9. So what happens is I always benefit if I replace some of the coins of lower denomination by a coin of higher denomination. So this just proves that once I take a coin with higher denomination, the number of coins required will be less, and that is the case always. So this proves the greedy arrangement which I am going to do always. So I am going to greedily take the maximum available denomination which is less than or equal to my requirement, and this will always give me the minimum amount of coins which will be needed to create s, right? So that gives us a way to actually calculate f of s. And okay, that's all well and good, but what we want to find out is we want to find out the minimum element which cannot be made using k coins. So we have k coins, but we need an element which needs at least k plus 1 coins to be made. So yeah, that's one thing. But let's see an observation which will help us in actually solving the problem. So what we'll calculate here is for each coin we'll calculate the maximum number of times that we can take it. Since in the input it is already given that a1 is less than a2 is less than an is less than equals to 9. So we know that all the elements are already sorted. So what I'm going to do is, so this is a solution rather than an observation. So in step 1 what you do is all the AIs you just convert them to 10 to the power AIs because that would be more convenient. So for example here if you have a 0, 1 and 2, that will be 10, 100, sorry 1, 10 and 100. A 0 or 4 will be 1 and a 10 to the power 4. So similarly you just convert all the AIs to 10 to the power AIs for convenience. And now once you have that, what you do is for each I calculate the maximum amount of times that you can take the ith coin. So what we'll do is we'll calculate b of I, which denotes the maximum amount of times that we can take the ith coin. And it's again pretty intuitive how to calculate it. So we can take the ith coin as long as its value doesn't exceed the I plus 1th coin, because once it does, we'll just replace the ith coin with an I plus 1th coin, since in f of s we always take the maximum amount of denomination that we have. So obviously we can take the ith coin until and unless its value remains less than or equal to the I plus 1th coin, right? So b of I can just be calculated as something like a of I plus 1. So what we'll do is, let's say k is the maximum amount. So the condition that should hold is k times a of I should be strictly less than a of I plus 1. So that means k should be strictly less than a of I plus 1 divided by a of I. And we know that all of them are powers of 10, so they will be divisible with each other. So that just means that b of I is nothing but a of I plus 1 upon a of I minus 1. Because I can use the ith coin these many times, and once I use them at least these times, then the value will become equal to the I plus 1th denomination, and then I can just replace the ith denomination with I plus 1th, and that will help me in reducing my f of s, right? So I'll just calculate this b value for all the elements, and then the next step is pretty simple. You just keep taking all the values. So if you come at a situation where b of I is less than the requirement, then you just take all the coins, then take all bi coins of ith denomination. And otherwise what you do is you already have some coins and you have a requirement, but your requirement is less than b of I. That means if you take all the bi coins of the I denomination, you will exceed your requirement. So what you're essentially going to do is you're going to take b of I minus requirement coins. So take just b of I minus requirement coins of type I, and break out, because once you do it, you have actually fulfilled your requirement, and now you don't need to go any further. And yeah, so obviously your initial requirement would be k plus 1, because you need k plus 1 coins, and that is the first time you will exceed k. So yeah, this completes the actual solution to this problem. You just greedily calculate first of all the value b of I for all the i's, and obviously if I is equals to n, then there is no element which is greater, so b of n will always be infinity, because we can take as many amount of coins as possible of the largest denomination, because there is nothing greater that we have. So yeah, that's one thing. And then you can calculate b of I as a of I plus 1 upon a of I minus 1. That is the maximum amount of times that you can take the ith coin, and you just keep accumulating them, and as soon as your requirement is met, you break out of the loop and keep calculating your answer, right? So let's just have a look at the code to get a better idea. Alright, so this is what I'm doing here. First of all, I'm converting all the AIs to their respective powers of 10. That would just make it more convenient. And for all i's, what I do is I'll calculate b of I as this. If I is equals to n, then it's going to be infinity. Otherwise, it's going to be a of I plus 1 minus a of I upon a of I. This is just what I described. And I always maintain the sum, which is the summation of value of, which is the summation of all the b of I up till the prefix of I. So sum is just b1 plus b2 up till b of I. And if this sum plus value is going to exceed k, that means that my requirement will be fulfilled if I take all of them. So I will exceed my requirement if I take all the b of I values of the ith denomination. And then what I do is I just take k minus sum plus 1 values of them, and that will fulfill my requirement, because my requirement is k plus 1 and I'm subtracting sum from that. And I multiply ai because I am taking these many coins of denomination ai. And if that's not the case, then first of all, I'll increment my sum so as to keep it updated. And also I'll just take all the coins that I have of this denomination. I mean, that can be taken such that the value doesn't exceed the I plus 1th coin, and that is done using val times a of I, because all of the coins will have a denomination a of I. And yeah, I'll just keep doing it. And obviously for I is equals to n, my loop will break, because val is infinity, so this condition will always be true if I reach I is equals to n. And yeah, I just finally output my answer, and this is going to work. So yeah, this concludes the solution to problem C. So moving on to the last problem that I'll be discussing today. So this is problem E, and this is again a rather trickier one. I mean, if I had like 20 to 25 more minutes in the contest, there is a slight chance that I could have solved it, but I had already messed up a lot by then. So anyways, let's start with the solution and let's see what this problem is actually saying. So what's happening is there are n heroes, and all of them are fighting simultaneously in an arena, and the ith hero has a of I health points. And what happens in each round is that obviously all the heroes which are alive will compete in a particular round, and all the alive heroes deal a damage of 1 to all the other heroes. And yeah, that's what happens in one round. That is all that happens. And finally, if a hero's health goes less than 1, then he obviously dies and he will not take part in the next round. But if his health is still there, he will take part in the next round. And what we want to do is, we have been given with a range of x. That means that all the AIs have to be from 1 to x, and we need to calculate the total number of arrangements of the array A such that something happens. And that something is that when the contest has ended, when everything has ended, exactly one hero is not remaining. That is, there is no winner. So what that means is that there were at least two people who competed in the last round. And yeah, so if there is exactly one person left, then that round will not happen, because he can't kill and he can't inflict a damage to anyone, and it will be just left like that. So what a good thing to happen here is that there were at least two people who competed in the last round. So if that happens, then my sequence AI to begin with was good, otherwise it was bad. So I need to calculate the number of good sequences which lead to a situation where the number of people competing in the final round is at least two. And out of those two people, both of them just die. And like, it can be more than two also, but all of them just die. So finally there are x rounds and x people in the last round, and all x of them die simultaneously. And it doesn't happen that one of them is left behind, right? So yeah, that's the problem here. And as you can see here, the tag is of DP, and we are going to use DP to solve this problem. And that was quite clear to me from the beginning, just looking at the constraints. The constraints were pretty low, which allowed for an O of n cube solution. So the first thought about this problem is always DP, and is in problems like this, it is always DP. So yeah, we are going to solve this problem using DP, that is for sure. But to do that, we are going to make some observations again, and let's just begin with it. So we are at problem E, and finally the first thing here is we will use DP. Now, of course, the first thing which we have to find out when we are using DP is to get somehow the state of the DP, right? So the first question is how to define the state. And I'm going to describe actually how I concluded that, yeah, that is going to be my particular state. And this is actually an art which you need to know to solve a lot of difficult DP problems. And the art is to actually find out what is relevant and what should be in the state of the DP. So always when you are trying to find out the state of the DP, just try to find out what is the information which is relevant to you. Always try to find out the information which is relevant to actually successfully make transitions, right? So we try to find out the information which is relevant to make successful transitions. And for that, we will again make an observation. Okay, so let's say we are in the first round. So in the first round, we have n people, right? So all these n people are going to inflict some damage to all the other people. So every person will inflict a damage of 1 to all the other heroes. So that just means that in the first round, every hero will have to experience a damage of n minus 1 points, right? Because as you can see, every person is inflicting a damage of 1 to all the other heroes, and there are n heroes. So every person will experience a damage from all the other n minus 1 heroes. So that means that all the heroes will experience a damage of n minus 1 health points. And so in the first round, every hero gets damaged by n minus 1 health points. Yeah, so that is what happens. But the thing is, if a hero had a health in the range from 1 to n minus 1, then that hero will just die, right? So in order to successfully reach the second point, what we conclude is that the health of the hero should have been at least n, because if his health is from 1 to n minus 1, then after this round his health will become less than 1, and so he will just die. So that means that in order to go to round 2, minimum health requirement is like n points, right? So yeah, that seems relevant, right? The minimum requirement, that somehow is seeming relevant to me. But of course in the first round we knew that there were n people, so let's just assume that after the first round is over, there are some people died, and after removing all those dead people, I have rem amount of people remaining. So let's say in the second round I have rem heroes remaining, right? So that is the condition, that is the situation here. The first round is already over, and I have rem amount of heroes still remaining, and obviously every hero has been inflicted by a damage of n minus 1 points already. So now now I have remaining amount of people, and every hero has already been inflicted by n minus 1 damage points. So after the second round is over, of course the total damage after round 2 is going to be the damage from round 1 plus the damage from round 2. So the damage from round 1 was n minus 1 points, and since in round 2 I had rem people, that's what my assumption is, the other damage of rem minus 1 is also going to be inflicted. So total damage is going to be n minus rem minus 2, and so that just means that in order to qualify to round 3, minimum health requirement is n minus rem minus 1, right? Because if the health is from n minus rem minus 1 to 0, then he's going to die. N minus rem minus 1 to 0, then he's going to die. So if the health is from 0 to n minus rem minus 2, then he's going to die. But if its health is at least n minus rem minus 1, he's going to live. So what we are trying to see here is that in every round there is a quantity which is called this, the minimum requirement, which is needed so that we qualify to this round. So obviously we are already in the first round, so the minimum requirement to qualify for the first round is just 1 health point, and the minimum requirement to qualify for the second round is just n minus 1 health points. And assuming that after round 1 rem amount of people qualify to round 2, the minimum requirement to qualify to round 3 is just n minus rem minus 1. Sorry, n plus rem. This should be a plus here. Yeah, so minimum amount of health points that are needed to qualify to round 3 is n plus rem minus 1. So what we realize here is that this quantity of minimum requirement is somehow relevant. So the quantity minimum requirement to qualify for a round seems somehow important. And as it turns out, this is the only other quantity. Of course, we always need the index when we are doing a DP. One of the states is always the index, but it turns out we can just take this minimum requirement to qualify for a round as our second index, and that is going to help us in making our transitions successfully. So finally, I will define a state of my DP like this. Again, try to realize how I actually came up with this. I made some observations about the number of the minimum requirement to go from each round to the next round, and I tried to see how this quantity is relevant, and I realized that this quantity is changing with each round, and this will help me in making successful transitions, and that is how I finally concluded that this is an important quantity, so it has to be included in the state of my DP. So now I am ready to define a DP state where DP of ij represents that the number of good sequences when we have I alive heroes. So I have I alive heroes, and just a minute. So I have I alive heroes, and the minimum requirement to reach the current round is j health points. Yeah, so this is what the state of my DP is going to be. just try to comprehend the state and try to think actually what this state is representing. And once you're done with it, continue with watching the solution. So I'll just repeat the state of my DP. So it is the actual number of good sequences that I will have when there are I alive heroes, and the minimum requirement to reach the current round is J health points. So the final answer obviously is going to be DP of n and 1. That is because initially I had n alive heroes and the minimum requirement to reach the first round was just 1 coin, was just 1 health point. As you can see, the AI is starting from 1 and it is going up to x. Instead of x, I'll be using k, which is there in my code. So yeah, that's one thing. So the final answer is going to be DP of n comma 1 because I have n alive heroes and the minimum requirement to reach the first round is just 1 coin. Again, great. So now to make transitions, I will do another observation. So I'll make a range. I'll try to define a range, and that range is the range in which if a person's health is, then he is going to absolutely die in the current round. He's going to surely die, right? So let's say that MR, so let's just say that J is the min requirement to reach the current round, and I is the number of alive people as it is already defined in the state of the DP. And what I want is I want to define a range such that if an element has a health in this particular range, he is surely going to die in the current round. And obviously if there are I alive people, then every hero will get a damage of I minus 1 because every hero will inflict a damage of 1 to every other heroes. So damage to all heroes is going to be I minus 1 because there are I minus 1 alive heroes. And that just means that the minimum requirement to reach this particular round was J, and obviously so they have already been inflicted with a damage of J. So already inflicted damage is J because that was the minimum requirement. So again, if I have already been inflicted by a damage of, so it is going to be J minus 1 and not J, or maybe yeah, it's going to be J only. So one thing which I realize is that they have already been inflicted with a damage of J, and finally they will again be inflicted by a damage of I minus 1 because there are there are I minus 1, there are I people, and every person is inflicted a damage of 1 to every other person. So the total amount of damage that everyone will have to face is J plus I minus 1, right? So what that means is I actually have a range of health points which one should have so that he is going to die in this particular round, and that range is nothing but starting from the minimum requirement which is J and going all the way up to J plus I minus 1, right? So yeah, this is the range here, and the total number of elements can be calculated easily. But also there are two cases in this range. The first case is when k comes somewhere here, and the second case is when k comes somewhere here. So in case 1, I can say that the number of elements in my range is going to be from J to k, which is nothing but k minus J plus 1. And the case 2 is when the range is something like this, where k is after J plus I minus 1. So the range will just be from J to J plus I minus 1. And so the range is going to be just I minus 1 because the first I minus 1 people who have their health from J to J plus I minus 1 are going to die, and every other person is going to just live, right? So yeah, obviously, so the final range is going to be the number of people in the range who are going to die is going to be minimum of I minus 1 and k minus J plus 1. So yeah, now I successfully have a range that is the number of people, the number of health points which a person can have so that he will surely die. And if a person is in this particular range, then he satisfies that condition of surely dying in the current round. And the total number of people like that is going to be minimum of I minus 1 or k minus J plus 1. Okay, cool, right? Yeah, so once I have this range, now what I'm going to do is now I'm going to actually define the actual transitions in my DP. Enough observations. Now let's come to the transitions. So my state is I comma j, where I is the so as defined already here, I is the number of alive heroes that I currently have. That is, so let's replace ij by remaining comma requirement. So I have rem amount of people who are already alive, who are still alive, and requirement was the minimum requirement that was there to reach this particular round. And I also have, using these two values, I can calculate this range pretty easily. And yeah, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to iterate on the number of people that die in the current round. As you can see that currently I have just a 2D state, and the range for both these states is up to 0 to 500. So obviously I can do something else, because for 500 and O of n cube solution is viable. So the transitions are not linear here. That this just gives an idea that the transitions also are going to be linear, and they are not going to be constant time, right? So I'm going to iterate on the number of people that die in the current round. Let's say I people die in the current round, right? So if I people are dying in the current round, first of all I'll have to choose I people, right? I have rem amount of people, and from them I'm going to choose I people who are going to die. And once they die, I obviously have this range, and that means that out of all the persons that die, they can lie in any range from they can lie from any they can lie in any value in which, as long as they are in this particular range, right? So basically they can take these number of values. Since they are dying, they can successfully take these number of values, and if they take any one of this value, they are surely going to die. So let's say that this is like mod r, right? This is the number of values that they can take such that they surely die. So what is the total number of ways here? So the total number of ways is, firstly I will choose I people from n people, and all these I people are going to die. And once I have successfully chosen I people, I also have to assign them some values, and all of them can have values starting from anywhere in this range and ending from anywhere to this endpoint. So all of them can have a total of mod r values, right? So the number of ways that we'll have is, so I have a combination, and from rem I will choose I values, right? And once I have that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that I have already chosen I amount of people which are actually going to die in this round, but all of them can have around these mod r values. So all of them can have mod r values, so that just means the number of ways to arrange them will just be mod r raised to the power I, because there are I people, and for every person I have mod r choices, and I'm sure that if they are in this range of mod r, then they are surely going to die. So this is the number of ways I make people die. But now I also have some alive people, right? And obviously that can be calculated as dp of, so I had remaining people, and out of the remaining people I of them died, right? And since I had rem amount of people, my requirement is now, so my requirement is now requirement plus rem minus 1, because everyone will inflict an extra damage of rem minus 1. So the minimum requirement will be the previous minimum requirement plus rem minus 1, right? So yeah, this is the way we are actually going to transition. First we'll choose I people out of the remaining amount of people, and then we'll calculate the total number of assignments that we can do to the I people, and that can be done using r to the power I, mod r raised to the power I, and mod r is just the length of the range in which if a value is, then that particular hero is surely going to die, right? So yeah, this is how the transitions are going to work. They are going to be rem ci multiplied by power of mod r raised to the I multiplied by dp of rem minus I, because finally I'm going to have rem minus I people, and the requirement is going to increase to requirement plus rem minus 1. And of course there are also some base case which will become more clear once we have a proper look at the code. So yeah, this was it for this problem. As you can see, the problem involved a lot of observations and it was really an amazing problem. So yeah, let's look at the code now. Okay, so first of all, since we need NCR values, I have this inbuilt function which calculates NCR using factorials and inverse factorials. That's not really relevant. You can actually check out how to do this in the internet. There are lots of useful blogs related to this. So yeah, we can safely assume that we have a function which will calculate NCR for me. Right, I'm doing this recursively, so I declare a DP array and I set all the values to -1. And finally, my answer is going to be solve of n comma 1 because my minimum requirement in the first round is just 1. And what this solve function does is, firstly, there are some base cases. The first base case is when there is just 1% remaining, and that is the scenario which we would like to avoid. So then we'll just return 0. Otherwise, if there are 0% remaining, then I'll just return 1 because it's a successful way to do it. And also, if the requirement is greater than k, then obviously no person is actually going to die. And I know that there are people remaining because rem is neither equals to 1 nor equals to 0. So obviously I'll just return 0 from there. And this is the memoization stuff. That is, if I have already calculated the answer for this particular state, I'll just return that. And now coming on to the actual iteration stuff. So I'm iterating for I, and my I denotes the number of people which are going to die. So I people are going to die. So if I people are going to die, firstly I choose I people from the remaining amount of people, and then I calculate my mod r, which is minimum of rem -1 and k minus requirement plus 1, right? And finally I calculate my number of ways, which is NCI, which is rem ci multiplied by mod r raised to the power I, and finally I multiply that value with dp of rem minus I and requirement plus rem -1. This dp can be replaced by solve because I am doing it recursively, and I add that to my answer because I am iterating. And finally I just return dp of rem and requirement, which is equal to my answer, right? So this is how it is working. And yeah, the solution is pretty elegant, and I hope you were able to understand this solution like 80 to 90%. Like, I have tried my best to actually explain it really well, but I hope you are actually able to comprehend the solution, and you are actually able to understand how I came up with this state of dp and how to do it in general as well, right? So yeah, this concludes the solution to problem E, and that is the end of today's video. So thank you so much for watching till now, and I'm going to probably see you tomorrow with the next contest, right? Bye bye.